ladies and gentlemen, especially to our instructor, Mr. Jesse De La Cruz. Welcome to our reporting time in GE12, which is World Literature. Today, I will discuss the first part of our topic about the tragedy drama of Oedipus Rex by Sophocles. But before that, I will introduce myself first. I am Jean Rose D. Danila, a second-year college major in AB English language. I will share first a short summary of the topic. By leaving his home in Corinth, Oedipus thinks he has escaped a terrible prophecy that says that he will kill his father and marry his mother. Oedipus has defeated the riddling Sphinx, saved the seven-gated city of Thebes, and married the queen Jocasta. Her first husband Laius had been killed. They have 4 children: Eteocles, Polynices, Antigone, and Ismene, and they rule in peace. But a mysterious plague has recently afflicted the city, bringing death to the people, livestock, and crops. Oedipus has sent Creon to Delphi to find out from the oracle there what to do. A priest and his followers ask Oedipus to find a way to save them from the plague. Creon returns and reports that they need to find the murderer of Laius, the former king. Oedipus swears he will find and punish the man. He summons Tiresias, the famous seer, to tell what he knows. At first, Tiresias refuses to speak, but when pressed, he tells Oedipus that the murderer he seeks is Oedipus himself. The king and the Caros refuse to believe the prophet, and Oedipus accuses Tiresias and Creon of plots and corruption. Jocasta intervenes and tells Oedipus not to worry. Oedipus starts to ask questions about Laius' death, and the circumstances begin to sound familiar. But a messenger comes from Corinth to say that Oedipus' father is dead, so he doesn't need to worry about the prophecy. Oedipus asks about his mother, since they're that other part of the prophecy, and the messenger tells him he was adopted. Jocasta realizes the truth that Oedipus is her son as well as her husband, and tells Oedipus to stop the interrogations. He doesn't listen, and an eyewitness, the herdsman who rescued him when he was an infant, confirms that he was Laius and Jocasta's child, and that Oedipus killed Laius. A servant reports the suicide of Jocasta, and Oedipus emerges from the house having blinded himself. He seeks exile and mourns with his daughters. Creon takes over. Background of the author: Sophocles, facts and related content. Born 496 BCE in ancient Greece. He died 406 BCE in Athens, ancient Greece. His notable works: Ajax, Antigone, Electra, Oedipus Rex, Oedipus at Kolonos, Philoctetes, Trachanian woman talkers. His life and career: Sophocles was the younger contemporary of Aeschylus and older contemporary of Euripides. He was chosen in 480 when he was 16 to lead the paean, Caros chant to a god, celebrating the decisive Greek sea victory over the Persians to the Battle of Salamis. In 442, he served as one of the treasurers responsible for receiving and managing tribute money in Delian League. In 440, he was elected one of the 10 strategoi, high executive officials who commanded the armed forces as junior colleagues in Pericles. In 468, Sophocles won his first victory at Dionysian dramatic festival and defeating the great Aeschylus in the process. In total, Sophocles wrote 123 dramas for the festivals. Let's move to the background of the work. Oedipus Rex, also known by its Greek title Oedipus Tyrannus, or Oedipus the King, is an Athenian tragedy by Sophocles that was first performed around 429 BC. Originally, to the ancient Greeks, the title was simply Oedipus, as it is referred to by Aristotle in the Poetics. It is thought to have been renamed Oedipus Tyrannus to distinguish it from Oedipus at Colonus, a later play by Sophocles. In antiquity, the term tyrant referred to a ruler with no legitimate claim to rule, but it did not necessarily have a negative connotation. Of Sophocles, 3 Theban plays that have survived and that deal with the story of Oedipus. Oedipus Rex was the second to be written, following Antigone by about a dozen years. However, in terms of the chronology of events described by the plays, it comes first aloud by Oedipus at Colonus and then Antigone. Prior to the start of Oedipus Rex, Oedipus has become the king of Thebes while unwittingly fulfilling a prophecy that he would kill his father Laius, the previous king, and marry his mother, Jocasta, whom Oedipus took as his queen after solving the riddle of the Sphinx. The action of Sophocles' play concerns Oedipus' search for the murderer of Laius in order to end a plague ravaging Thebes, unaware that the killer he is looking for is none other than himself. At the end of the play, after the truth finally comes to light, Jocasta hangs herself while Oedipus, horrified at his patricide and incest, proceeds to gouge out his own eyes in despair. These are the characters and characterization. Oedipus, king of Thebes, and also a protagonist. Priest, the high priest of Thebes. Creon, Oedipus' brother-in-law. Chorus of Theban elders. Tiresias, an old blind prophet. Boy, attendant on Tiresias. Jocasta, wife of Oedipus, sister of Creon. Messenger, an old man. Servant, an old shepherd. Second messenger, a servant of Oedipus. Antigone, daughter of Oedipus and Jocasta, a child. Ismene, daughter of Oedipus and Jocasta, a child. Servants and attendants on Oedipus and Jocasta. Setting. The action takes place in Thebes in front of the royal palace. The main doors are directly facing the audience. There are altars beside the doors. A crowd of citizens carrying branches decorated with laurel garlands and wool and led by the priest has gathered in front of the altars, with some people sitting on the altar steps. Oedipus enters through the palace doors. The main events in each chapter. Chapter 1. Declaring his commitment to finding and punishing Laius' murderer, Oedipus says that he was sent for Tiresias, the blind prophet. After much pleading and mutual antagonism, Oedipus makes Tiresias say what he knows, that it was Oedipus who killed Laius. Outraged at the accusations, Oedipus calls him a fortune teller and a deceitful beggar priest. Both are displaying what in Greek is called orge or anger towards each other. Oedipus suspects the seer of working on Creon's behalf. Creon, as Laius' brother was and still is a potential successor to the throne. Tiresias thinks the king mad for not believing him and for being blind to his fate, not to mention ignorant of his true parentage. Oedipus then realizes that he does not know who his real mother is. Tiresias is led out while saying that Oedipus will be discovered to be a brother as well as a father to his children, a son as well as a husband to the same woman, and the killer of his father. He exits and the chorus enters, warning of the implications of the decisive, oracular charges against Oedipus. Chapter 2. Creon expresses great desire to prove his innocence to Oedipus, who continues to assert that Creon has been plotting to usurp the throne. Creon denies the accusations, saying he is quiet, content, and would not want the cares and responsibilities that come with being king. Oedipus calls for his death. Jocasta, having heard their quarrel, enters and tries to pacify them, and the chorus calls for proof of Creon's guilt before Oedipus punishes him. Jocasta reminds Oedipus of Apollo's oracle and also of the way Laius died. She recounts the story as it was told to her by a servant who was there at the crossroads where a charioteer and an old man attacked a man who in turn killed them. Hearing the tale, Oedipus realizes that he was the murderer and asks to consult the witness, the shepherd who is sent for. The chorus expresses its trust in the gods and prays to heaven for a restoration of faith in the oracle. Chapter 3. Jocasta prays to Apollo to restore Oedipus' sanity, since he was been acting strange since hearing the manner in which Laius died. A messenger tells her that King Polybus, the man Oedipus believes to be his father, has died and that the people of Isthmus want Oedipus to rule over them. Oedipus hopes this news means that the oracle is false. He hasn't killed his father since Polybus has died of old age, but he still fears that he is destined to marry his mother. The messenger tells him that Polybus was not his father and that he, a shepherd, had been handed the child Oedipus by another shepherd, one of Laius' men. Jocasta tries to intervene and stop the revelations, but Oedipus welcomes the news. Chapter 4. The shepherd enters and tells Oedipus, after a great deal of resistance, that he is Laius' son and that he had him taken away to his own country by the messenger so as to avoid his fate. The chorus bewails and changes an Oedipus from revered and fortunate ruler to one who has plunged in the depth of wretchedness. Chapter 5. A second messenger reports that Jocasta has just committed suicide, having realized that she was married to her son and thus had given birth to his children. He also reports that the king, suffering intensely upon hearing the news of his identity, blinded himself with the queen's brooches. Oedipus has also requested that he be shown to the peoples of Thebes and then exiled. He comes out bewildered and crying, asking for shelter from his painful memory, which cannot be removed as easily his eyes could be. In the darkness of his blindness, he wishes he were dead and feels the prophetic weight of oracle. His blindness will allow him to avoid the sight of those whom he was destined to wrong and toward whom to feel immense sorrow and guilt. He asked Creon to lead him out of the country, to give Jocasta a proper burial, and to take care of his young daughters, Antigone, who comes to play a central role in the play named after her, and Ismene. In an extremely moving final moment with his children, who he reminds himself are also his siblings, Oedipus hears them and asks to hold their hands for the last time. He tells them they will have difficult lives and will be punished by men for sins they did not commit. For this reason, he implores Thebes to pity them. He asks Creon again to exile him, and in his last speech, he expresses regret at having to depart from his beloved children. The chorus ends the play by using Oedipus' story to illustrate the famous moral that one should not judge a man's life until it's over.
Good afternoon everyone, especially to you Sir Jesse. So I am Chanel P. Baldas. I am a second year college in ASCA taking up Bachelor of Arts, major in English language. So this afternoon sir, I will continue our report which is entitled The Oedipus Rex by Sophocles. So my first reporter was Jean Rose Danila. So right now I will be discussing the other parts of our report, which is the moral lesson, the themes, the cultural implications, point of view, and the conflict. But before that, I will give you first the overview of Oedipus Rex. So, what is Oedipus Rex in a story? So, Oedipus Rex, it is a Greek mythology, the king of Thebes who unwittingly killed his father and married his mother. And the main plot of the story is Oedipus Rex is a straightforward interpretation of Greek myth when the king and queen of Thebes give birth to a son named Oedipus. So in every story, some author use different style of figure of speech. So let's stick with the question: what are the figure of speech utilized by the author, and provide evidences from the novel that show the use of the figure of speech. So for this topic, the author used irony and simile. But let's start with the irony. So the author used irony in the figure of speech. So for example, but I say to you, with both your eyes are blind. So this example of ironic speech that the blind man is saying that some are with eyes in the actual are blind person. It's also emphasize the context of the play and the emphasizes on the blind man being able to see more than the person has the gift of vision. The second example of figure of speech used in the story is simile. So for example, see how our lives like birds take wing like sparks that fly when a five soars. So which means it's anticipates the fact that something or someone or an event will spark a controversy or will instantly change. So for example, when you fly in that particular place, of course you can able to anticipate to different culture, different tradition for that particular area or place. So, and then what are the symbols used by the author? So actually the author used the symbol of eyes. It's also common in the story because the sight versus blindness is a main symbol used by the story. What are the imagery used in a poem or poem? So Sophocles utilizes imagery to show themes or sight versus visual impairment. Let's proceed to the themes of the story. So faith and free will, the conflict between the individuals and the state of people's willingness to ignore painful truths. So for the cultural implications, higher powers controlling one's life are commonly written about, reference, and even evaded it. So Sophocles, in displaying the thematic message that fate is ultimately unavoidable. So thus, the text displays that Oedipus Rex, the lead role, is a male and holds all the power within the family. In this story, we have different conflicts. So for example, man versus self, man versus society, man versus environment. But I have two here example of conflict in the story. So man versus man, because the argument between Creon and Oedipus is another example of conflict in the story, and it catalyzes Oedipus' thirst for finding Leo's murderer. So for man versus self, Oedipus contributes to the completion of his fate through his actions. So for the point of view of the story, Oedipus has fulfilled the prophecy that he will kill his mother and he will kill his father and marry his mother. So again, the point of view of the story is Oedipus has fulfilled the prophecy that he will kill his father and marry his mother. The moral lesson in the story, the Oedipus Rex by Sophocles, it is a story, the universal lessons of Oedipus the king. Oedipus the king is traumatic tale of a great king brought down by fate and destiny of the gods. It is a story of strife over events that were out of one's control, but mainly handled in a way that only caused further destruction and heartaches. So the moral lesson that I have after reading the story of Oedipus Rex is you cannot escape the fate, or we cannot escape the fate. So no matter how you tried for it, or no matter how we tried for it, no one can control our own destiny. Only God can do that. So thank you so much, sir, for listening and watching to our report, and I hope you will appreciate our efforts, sir, even a short period of time. So thank you, sir, and God bless.